Welcome to It's Beyond the Food podcast, my sisters. I'm your host, Stephanie Dodier, and today we're going to talk about why I don't support thought reframing when it comes to body image and what I teach instead. Now, let's get us started on agreement of what thought reframing is. And I'm going to give us a very common example, specifically around body image. So this is when we have the thought example, I hate my arms. They're so flabby. And we catch the thought, we're becoming aware we're having this thought, and then we say, no, I am grateful for my arms because they help me hug my children, my loved one. If you're familiar with intuitive eating and perhaps you've navigated yourself through the workbook, Evelyn and Elise will teach thought reframing in the self-coach workbook. I'll give you an example related to food. People often think if I eat a cookie, I'll get fat. Thought reframing will say, no, you don't get fat from eating a cookie. Thought reframing is also known in psychology with terminology such as cognitive shuffling, cognitive restructuring. Another great example of that is in recent research as a process that is now the gold standard in perimenopause and menopause insomnia symptoms. It's called CBTI, where the process of cognitive behavior coaching is used to help people reframe, in this case women, help women reframe their thoughts around their sleep issue during this period of their life. So it's called cognitive shuffling, where they look at their thought about insomnia and they're using the process of thought reframing to reduce anxiety and induce sleep faster or reduce the symptom of perimenopause, menopause, insomnia. Cognitive restructuring, cognitive shuffling, cognitive reframing, all the same thing. It's a process of replacing a thought by a more helpful thought. So whatever your goal is in thought reframing, reduce body image distress, reduce anxiety, you take the current thought that your brain is having and you're swapping it with a thought that will reduce anxiety, reduce distress. The thought swapping reframing is aimed at helping you achieve your goal. I think thought reframing is a great first step when it comes to body image healing. It's a first line approach, but it has limitation very specifically in the world of body image therapy. So let me walk you through what I have experienced in my practice, what the research is also identifying as limitation when it comes to body image healing. Number one, the most important limitation of thought reframing around body image is that this process is not engaging the four aspects of body image. Body image is not only the way we visually see our reflection in the mirror, see ourselves in the photo. It's not only the physical aspect. And that perhaps is the most frequent mistake that people are making when it comes to body image. They're thinking it's only their visual representation of their body. Body image is more than that. Body image as a cognitive aspect, the way we think about the reflection we're seeing in the mirror. It also has an emotional component, how we feel when we see that reflection in the mirror. Third component or final component beyond physical is the behavioral aspect of our body image. How we behave in the result of seeing and feeling our visual body image. So it has 4 components. And when we are approaching changing our body image, healing our body image, only using thought reframing, what we're doing is only addressing the cognitive aspect of body image, which will in short term perhaps make you feel better, but in the long term, it will require you to consistently do thought reframing. And that can get exhausting mentally and emotionally. And then 2, make you feel like you're not getting anywhere because it's not getting any better because you're constantly have to reframe the thought that leads you to feel distressed about your body. The second limitation of using thought reframing for body image healing is gaslighting. That's the primary danger that I see in my practice. I tend to work with people who have tried a lot of things. The number one comment I get from clients after we start working together is, quote, "I wish I found yours sooner." That's my ideal client. They have attempted many things, and that can also be professional who have attempted many things with their client work, and it's not getting their clients the result that they want. It's not most often not getting them in their own life the result that they're desiring. And that's how people end up working with me. So I'm a more an advanced and specialized type of ideal client. What I have to do a lot is educate people on gaslighting and most often self-gaslighting in the context of body image. So what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is the form of psychological manipulation when someone else deliberately tries to distort someone else's reality, or that we deny someone else lived experience. And in the most malicious way, gaslighting is when we make someone else doubt their own sanity, their own interpretation of reality. I want you to think about gaslighting in your relationship with yourself. Self-gaslighting is how you relate with yourself, how you engage with yourself. Let's think about how you're experiencing your own body image, your own thoughts, emotion, behavior related to your body. And when you become aware of your thought, your emotion, your behavior, how do you relate to these thoughts, emotion, behavior? How you relate to yourself as the creator of these thoughts, emotion, and behavior? Do you blame yourself? Do you criticize yourself? Do you deny your own reality, your own lived experience? Do you say to yourself, "Oh, it's only in my head"? It's not true that, fill in the blank. Is when you gaslight yourself into what is happening to you. And we often self-gaslight because acknowledging the reality, we have no tool, no way of making the acknowledgement of the reality not as distressful as we perceive it to be or imagine it to be. So self-gaslighting is a way of saying, "Oh, I don't want to look at this." And instead, I'm going to deny myself my own reality, and I'm going to criticize the, quote, "shit out of me." So hopefully I'll change the behavior so I don't have to look at the reality. It has the same negative impact that it is you gaslighting yourself or someone else gaslighting you. And for all the professionals listening to this episode, Most often, when I train professional and they're displaying behavior of gaslighting their client, it is never done from a space of being maliciously harming their client. They just don't know that the way they are engaging with their clients is from that space of gaslighting. So, an example of gaslighting in the context of body image, and I'm going to use my experience here because I'm a woman living in a fat body and I've tried many things in the last 10 years to change my body image. And one of the first things I tried was what it was called back then, 9 years ago, was body love. My body image coach was guiding me to look at my body, look at myself in the mirror, and say, I love myself. I love every part of my body. And repeatedly saying that, a form of positive thinking. And when my mind was rejecting the thought, the recommendation was to deny that experience, to reject the denying, saying, I love and accept myself unconditionally. Every time my brain was saying, but that's actually not true. How can you love this? You're ugly, you're fat, you're not like everybody else in society. My advice and thought reframing was to deny that. It is not true. All bodies are good bodies. And that led me to have more anxiety because every time I would leave the mirror or the space where I was doing the body image work and I would go in society, people would look at me. And I had no tool to cope with that. And it was like, but it's happening. People are judging me. People are commenting on my body. People are looking at me weird. But the thought reframing, positive thinking was to deny that experience instead of learning how to cope with that reality that was actually happening. So, how do we know when it's thought reframing as an actual psychological tool or gaslighting? It comes down to intent and consent. So if we think in terms of self-coaching, how you're coaching yourself through changing your body image, what is your intent? Is your intent to deny the current reality so you can not have to face it and just deny that your brain is thinking certain thought and change the thought instead of looking at the thought, understanding where it comes from? What is your intent? When you are in a therapeutic relationship, a coaching relationship, the consent is how you avoid gaslighting. You never tell a client to change their thought. You're never denying your client experience. You have tools and frameworks and process that allows you to see the reality as it is with your client and then ask for consent if your client is willing, ready, capable of changing their perspective on the current reality. Consent is a step of the way that I teach coaching and the way that I know therapists are trained to deliver therapy as well. Consent is the centric element of a therapeutic relationship. The third reason why I know that thought reframing is a first line approach, but not a therapeutic framework to change body image is because it allows you, it's formulated to skip learning and changing at the belief level. Thought reframing does not have a step in the process that allows you to investigate the reason why you're having the thought that you're having. It skips that step. It skipped you looking at the emotion that you're feeling even. So it skipped investigating the thought, finding the belief, processing the emotion, feeling the emotion associated with that thought, and it jumps to changing the thought. Cognitive behavior coaching does have a step where we change the thought, but that's the last step. The first two steps of cognitive behavior coaching, which is the gold standard when it comes to body image therapy, requires you to do step one and step two, which is to notice the thought, process the emotion associated with the thought, investigate why you're thinking this way, then changing the thought. So let me recap, and I'm going to talk about what should we do instead. 3 gaps in thought reframing and body image healing. Number 1, thought reframing does not engage with the 4 aspects of body image. Number 2, it can lead to self-gaslighting or gaslighting in a therapeutic relationship. And number 3, it skips the learning and changing of the belief that creates the thought. So what should we do instead? Number 1, approach conversation, either self-coaching or conversation in your practice, with a therapeutic process that allows you to help support coach your client with their thoughts, beliefs, emotion, behavior around body image. Cognitive behavior coaching or cognitive behavior therapy if you're a licensed therapist. What can this look like? Putting it into actual step-by-step process can be really helpful to self-validate how you're helping and coaching your client. In a prior episode, I shared with you the Going to Beyond the Food model that I use in my practice, which is 3 very simple steps: pause, investigate, and decide. So when we are discussing with a client the stress they are experiencing with their body, number 1, we should pause. We should pause and not desire to fix the distress that they're experiencing with their body. We need to pause and help them feel their emotion that they're experiencing, validating the distress that they're experiencing with their body. Something like, I know you feel disgusted with your body. I hear you when you say this. Lean into that distress, that disgust that you're feeling, and let's ride the emotion. I teach a process called riding the wave, where we go into the body somatically, and then we feel the emotion, we process, we ride the wave of the emotion, and then we approach the feeling of the emotion associated with the thought from a place of self-compassion. We don't make the emotion a problem. We don't make the emotion bad. We don't qualify the emotion as positive or negative. We acknowledge that there's sensation in the body that makes us feel anxious, disgusted. Once that emotion is acknowledged and processed, the next step is to investigate. Now again, we're not jumping to changing the thought. Investigate. Why are you thinking the thought that you're thinking? This is where cognitive behavior coaching question comes in, where we help our client identify the belief that creates the thought. Because thoughts are just an impulse from the brain to assess, in this case, the presentation of the body in a certain way based on belief, on social conditioning, on past experience, on trauma. There is a reason why we judge our body the way we do. A therapeutic process of body image will investigate that, unearth that, bring it to our awareness so that we can, last step, decide. Do we want to continue to believe this thing about our body? Do we want to continue to believe in the same way, example, that our mother has taught us to think about our body? Because very often, in the case of women, they have been taught through a lineage of intergenerational teaching how to assess body. Do I want to continue to think like society tells me I should think about my body? That part is where the healing happens. Working at the belief level is how we change the relationship that we have to our body for the rest of our life. Thought reframing, thought swapping, cognitive shuffling will no longer be needed because we will have changed the belief. So investigating why we think the way we think, and then in collaboration, in a consensual relationship with our client, we decide, or our clients decide, of a new way to believe about bodies, body looks, body weights. Whatever the body belief we've identified, we decide on a new belief, and we help teach, coach our client to build up a new belief. That's another podcast episode, okay? But we decide collaboratively, or if you know how to self-coach, you decide on a new belief, and then you go through the process of building up a new belief. Now, this is where thought reframing, cognitive shuffling comes in. Once you've done step 1, 2, and 3, and you are in the process of building up a new belief, the old thought will come up. It's totally normal. As you learn to believe, you will have the old belief and the new belief present in your mind. And that's when thought reframing comes in. When you notice the old belief, the old thought comes up, but you've already done the investigation and you have consensually decided to believe something else, that's when you can say, oh, yeah, thank you, brain, for bringing up this old way of thinking about my body. Makes total sense that you would think that, because let's be clear, I've been thinking that for 15 years. So yeah, it's an habitual thought. But right now, I have decided to believe this about my body. That's intentional thinking. That's when we bring back up the new belief we've decided to build up, and we reframe the old distressful thought with our new intentional thinking. Now, there's a difference between reframing and intentional thinking, and that's the difference here. I want you to think of intentional thinking as encompassing the whole process of pausing, awareness, investigation, deciding, and reframing. It's part of the process, but it's not extracted to be done on its own as the solution. Here's an analogy, and I'll close on this on the podcast. In the case specifically, that's my expertise on body image, I want you to think of thought reframing as a Band-Aid. So imagine that you've cut your hand or your finger, and there's a little piece of debris inside of your finger, right? You've cut your finger, debris got in, and then it's starting to hurt. Perhaps there's some like redness around it, and then you put a Band-Aid on it, right? You're hoping that tomorrow when you wake up, the redness is gone, the pain is gone, and it's great. And then you wake up the next morning, and the redness is still there, and there's some pus coming out. Now, and there's 2 ways you can deal with that. You can put a cream on it to hopefully control the infection, and then put a Band-Aid on it. But the next morning you wake up with the same level of pain, With pus against coming out, you clean it up, put the cream on it again, put the Band-Aid. And then third day, the same thing happened. And the fourth day, the same thing happened. And the fifth day, the same thing happened. The pain doesn't go away. The pus doesn't go away. Although it's controlled, it never goes away. That's what thought reframing is without the therapeutic investigation work done. So if you go back to the injury with the debris inside of the finger, what the therapeutic approach would have been is clean up the wound to remove the debris, to remove that little piece of wood, that little stone in there, like to go and pull it out, take some pliers, some tweezer and pull it out, then put the cream, then put the Band-Aid. And what would have happened, perhaps the pain would have reduced, the pus would have started being produced in 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9. At some point, the wound would have healed. That's what I teach. That's what I'm referring as a therapeutic framework that investigate the root cause, thought swapping or thought reframing. I love you, my sister, and I'll see you on the next podcast. If you are listening to the podcast, you are probably in need of support. You have to come and grab our free non-diet coaching assessment tool and the how to use audio training at stephaniedodier.com/client assessment. And if you want support with the concept thought on the podcast and take your skills to the next level, we have a number of resources and programs on the shop page of our website. The best bet is for you to join our newsletter to get all the deeds as they become available. And I'll see you on the other side.